Okay, Derbyites, we are here with some more forum posters from the Gold Derby forums to break down all the stuff happening in the awards world. We're going to be talking guilds, we're going to be talking Oscars, and perhaps the biggest sort of news that's happened this week is the Academy, in response to its lack of diversity among acting nominees, has brought in some sort of sweeping changes to how the Oscars are going to work moving forward. So I think we're going to start off by talking about that because our forums have blown up about that. But firstly, here's who's joining us. We've got Chris, who's Christopher K in our forums. We've got Ibad, who is Manakamana in our forums. And we've got Jalal, who is Jay Haddad in our forums. Have I got that all right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Chris, let's start with you. You won our Golden Globe TV predictions. Congratulations at Gold Derby. Talk us through some of these rule changes and what you think about them.
I think they're okay. For a start, I think the 10-year thing is pretty good. It says each new member voting status shall last 10 years and be renewed if that member has been active in motion pictures during the decade. I think that's a pretty good idea. I guess if you're not even in the business anymore, why should you get to vote, right? If you're not contributing. I think they're fine. I do think that it should be extended, as Tom said, to probably about 10,000. That's my opinion. And I do think they have to be more diverse with both races and women.
Yeah. What do you think, Ibad?
Yeah, I think they're tough-minded. I think it's fair, and I think it is important that they're setting up some really rigorous goals for more minority voters and female voters to actually reflect the current demographic of moviegoers today, because otherwise the Academy will get pretty irrelevant pretty quickly.
Yeah, what do you think, Jalal?
I'm optimistic about the rule change, especially Cheryl's commitment to doubling the amount of people of color and women in the Academy in the next, I think they said by 2020. I like that a lot. I'm curious to see if kicking out members of the Academy will actually work. Not kicking them out, but I guess revoking their voting rights, or whatever you want to call it. Because I think, so unless they have like evidence, like when they looked at people's past ballots to show that maybe kicking out some of those older voters that don't necessarily work in the Academy anymore, still, or if that would have affected the nominees this year, then I don't know if that will necessarily make a huge change. But I'm glad that they're expanding the membership to be more inclusive.
In the forums, Jacko says, these are solid changes, but there really isn't anything stopping Oscars So White Part 3 next year. And Emmy Runner says, yep, people are getting excited for no reason, no matter how old those actors can be. How hard could it be for their publicists to find a little role in 10 years that would only require them to just stand in the background for a minute? I wouldn't be surprised if this rule change only eliminates someone in Kirk Douglas in the end. So
that's probably true.
Yeah.
Well, apparently, if you've been nominated, you get to maintain your lifetime voting rights membership, and also if you've won before. So Kirk Douglas is pretty safe as long as he's around, which, but it'll kick out more like executives who are invited but may move on to a different industry later, or like actors who retire and become nuns, like they don't need to have the same voting privileges.
Yeah, and I agree with that. There were a lot of people in the 70s when Cheryl and Isaacs talked about in the 70s, they tried to make the Academy more diverse in terms of age, so they put a lot of people who were younger in the 70s, and I think a lot of them have left the industry by now. So I think it's good that maybe their voting is being revoked, but as people in the forum said, I think they might be lenient with what counts as still working in the industry. Because I think like the extra example is like a perfect idea. I could see someone getting a small part in a movie once every 10 years or working as a casting director once every 10 years just so they can vote.
Yeah. Sasha in the forums goes, I already thought it, and these changes are pretty ageist, and you guys know how much I love older folks. Networks don't care about older viewers, and now the Academy is going to do the same as members. I think there's truly no perfect solution for the issue. So, there you go. Some thoughts there, and get into the forums and chat about these rule changes, guys. Do we have any last thoughts on the rule changes at all we want to say?
I would just say, if there's going to be any completely new or perfect fix to it, is if you completely scrapped everybody and started new. And I don't think they're ever going to do that. So that is true that it's going to be hard. And as someone else was saying, it's going to be a long-term process. This isn't... It could be Oscars will wait next year too, and for 5 years from now. So it will probably take 20 years if they're going to go at this trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're aiming for long-term change, but I think that's as good as you can do at this point in time without making things too different.
Well, they had already wanted long-term. I know Cheryl and the rest of the board had been trying to put in people of color and women more often in the past 3 years, but it wasn't working fast enough. So I think that's why these changes came this year. But I'm actually more excited for next year's Oscars now because of these rules changes, and I wanted to see how drastically it's going to affect them. So I'm really excited for time to move on, because I think this will affect the Academy more in terms of, I think screeners will become even more important. Because with a younger voting base, I think people who are still working in the Academy, it's going to be harder to view as many movies. And so I think they'll rely on things like screeners and for-year consideration campaigns. So I'm excited to see what happens.
I wonder if the rule changes won't have much of an impact for the next couple of years, like has been suggested. But the sort of fact that the controversy this year rose to a level where they felt the need to bring in sweeping rule changes is going to have an impact on who Academy members vote for next year for the Oscars. Like, I just wonder, like, and last year I know there was controversy about the Oscars being very wide, about African American actors missing out on nominations. But this year it's reached a much more critical mainstream mass, that sort of like critique of the Academy. Like, it's being talked about in a lot more of an intensified way this year than it was last year. And I just wonder if that's gonna have an impact when minority performances are going to get a better look at next year, even without any of the rule changes that have been brought in. Just like, it's really going to be at the top of voters' agendas next year when they're filling out their ballots. And look, go in, Joel. Oh
no, you can finish.
I was just going to add a second point that I feel like we have seen African American and minority performances win and be nominated for Oscars before. It's not like they've never gotten in. So it's almost like if just the right performance comes along next year, or a couple of ones come along next year, it could get in, and it might have nothing to do with rule changes or anything like that. It could just be that just happens that's the one that tickles the Academy's fancy. Like, I don't think what we've seen the past 2 years is like evidence that they wouldn't nominate a minority performance. It's just they don't have a tendency to go out of their way to nominate. Like, there's a preference for white performance. So I'm not defending the Academy, but yeah, like, what do you think, Charles?
Don Cheadle was interviewed today at Sundance. Don Cheadle and the star of Ava DuVernay's first film, Middle of Nowhere, the woman that starred in that, and they were interviewed. And Don Cheadle talked about the rule change. He actually kind of, I think, proposed a better plan about forcing Academy members to watch all the major films, kind of like how they used to do, or they still do for the foreign language nominees, and kind of rating them. because he kind of just said if more people had seen movies like Beasts of No Nation, they would have voted for it, and I agree with that. I think just Beasts of No Nation, the way the platform it was released on, and how it kind of tanked at the box office, if more people had seen it and been aware of it, Idris Elba would be winning right now, I think.
I think another responsibility over the next year, which will be interesting to see, is inclusiveness in the conversation that's usually propelled by the actual the Oscar media, the press, the news, because it tends to narrow cast this field of like likely contenders based on studio or the prestigiousness sounding of the plot. But I think they've propelled someone like Sylvester Stallone in this year, and they could do that, bringing to light and bringing to Academy voters' attention a lot more diverse performances and actors that they might have not considered on their own before that.
I'd actually agree with that. I think it's going to be a short-term memory by the time next year comes, like with everything, and unless the media is actually involved and makes a point of saying, is this going to happen again, I think it'll just happen again. But I would also like to say, kind of as a devil's advocate a little bit, a lot of people are also saying how this is much more of an industry problem. And as I said, I actually said this in the forum, I believe, it's true that it's an industry problem from top to bottom, and that has to change completely as well. But you can have like two thoughts in your head. Just because it's an industry problem and as a whole, that doesn't mean there's also this Oscar problem. And I think both are legitimate.
Yeah, totally. I mean, other industry awards had recognized Straight Outta Compton and Idris Elba and Benicio del Toro even. So the Academy is sort of playing catch-up, and that's something it has to fix in its own right.
Yeah. And I think you brought up earlier that the way journalists talk about films, Straight Outta Compton was never talked about as a prestigious film. And I think if journalists talked about it in another way and took it more seriously, kind of like how Scott Feinberg did, that it would have stood a better chance.
Right. I did not see Straight Outta Compton, so I don't have an opinion on the movie itself. But I did not have it in my predictions because I knew there was no way that they would ever nominate it for Best Picture. No way. I'm surprised it got in for the writing award. It was not going to happen.
Yeah, I think Straight Outta Compton is not a film that you would imagine appeals to older white men.
Exactly.
There's other performances and stuff we think, oh, how did the Academy not nominate that? But like that I think not getting into Best Picture is clearly a demographical issue with the Academy and certain demographics not being well represented. You know, the lead actor from Selma not getting nominated last year, you might go, well, that's the kind of performance we see nominated by the Academy before. That's bizarre, but Straight Outta Compton I think you can clearly put down to demographics in the Academy, and if you want to see films like Straight Outta Compton get nominated, you do need to make some changes with the demographics of the voting block. They've brought in some changes. So definitely I think the changes they're bringing in could help another film like Straight Outta Compton. Again, maybe not next year, because next year it may have not changed enough, because it does seem like this is the kind of change that will take a few years to create. It's not like they're going to boot out thousands of Academy members in the next year and bring in thousands more next year. But I think clearly you can look at Straight Outta Compton as a demographic issue for the Academy of not having representatives. It could be just having old members just as much as non-minority members as well of the Academy. That is not an old person's film.
Yeah. Well, I think the kicking out older members affects. I think we would have seen changes like Social Network would have won instead of The King's Speech. We would have seen Brokeback Mountain win instead of Crash. I don't think it's going to affect the diversity element as much until we actually see an increase in new members, which, like you said, is going to take years.
And that's what's so interesting about this in a lot of ways, is that these sweeping changes have been brought in to address a specific concern about a lack of diversity nominees, a lack of diversity within their nominees. Yet this is going to have ramifications on other races and other decisions the Academy make that have nothing to do with diversity. The kinds of films we're going to see, like a younger Academy would have probably seen a 500 Days of Summer get a screenplay nomination. You know, nothing to do with any of the issues they're trying to address here. So there are going to be some unintended consequences of the Academy bringing these rules, and perhaps some good unintended consequences, perhaps some popular ones. So it's not necessarily something they'll be regretting in a couple of years' time. It might freshen up the awards across the board. May have seen a Star Wars get in, or a Dark Knight have gotten in a couple of years ago. So anyway, let's take a bit of a dive into the acting races now. Let's have a bit of chat about that because this. Oh, well, actually, no. Let's talk about it because the PGAs are tonight, aren't they? We've got the Producers Guild Awards giving out their winners. Who are we predicting to win that, Chris?
Mad Max.
Mad Max. Why? Explain us through the Mad Max prediction.
I think the only three capable for both awards, Oscars and PGA, is Mad Max, The Revenant, and Spotlight. I think that they're more willing probably to take the chance on something not as subdued as Spotlight. And I just have a feeling with the momentum it seems to be having that it could do it.
Yep. What do we think, guys? Do we agree or disagree?
I don't think
the PGA's voting system tends to lean more towards consensus rather than the passionate pick. So I would be surprised. That would be a great surprise, I think. But I would imagine that Spotlight is the most sort of broadly palatable of the movies. But I would also be interested to see if The Big Short can take it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's between Spotlight and Revenant. I think Mad Max is going to win DGA, but that's another story. But no, yeah, because Spotlight probably not appeals, but it'll be ranked higher on more ballots. If it's not number one, it'll probably be 2 or 3 or 4. While I think some older voters might put Mad Max down at like 8 or 9. And The Revenant, I think. Oh, sorry, what?
Some people just don't get Mad Max.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think people will look at it more as a directorial achievement, and so I'm gonna count it out for the PGAs, but not later on the road. But no, I think The Revenant is picking up steam. Alejandro Iñárritu is really, really well respected, like more respected than I thought, and so I think that's gonna be the winner tonight, probably.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards The Revenant too, and partly that's because I feel like it's done great at the box office, so that's good for producers. Mm-hmm. It's got the most Oscar nominations. It did well at the Globes. It's sort of, in many ways, in that sort of front-runner position. It wouldn't be a surprising winner, and I just think with box office that'll get it over Spotlight at the end, and it's new. It's fresher in people's minds. Yeah. Yeah. Any more thoughts on that specific race?
I would only say I agree. With me, it's a 51-49% between the two, and I think it's going to be very close. I think.
Yeah.
I would have guessed that DGA was more in the sort of Mad Max Revenant camp, but if the Revenant can pull that off tonight, then I would say that's probably the new front runner for the Oscars.
Yeah.
Yeah, and let's talk about we have a real barn burner with the Oscar Best Picture race this year. We don't have a clear front runner. We don't have it's a divided field. You've got The Revenant, which had the most nominations. It won the Golden Globe. You've got Spotlight, which has sort of been the de facto front runner for most of the race this year. It had a very good Oscar nominations morning, picking up nominations pretty much everywhere where you'd expect it. Maybe Michael Keaton could have gotten in too, but Mark Ruffalo did, so it's not like they were ignored in that category. And they got the editing nomination that they needed. And then you've got The Big Short, which also popped up. Adam McKay got in Best Director, and that film's everywhere where you'd expect it to be, and maybe even 1 or 2 places more. So you got 3 films firing on all cylinders heading into the Oscar race, and you've got even Mad Max would have a claim to the title. how do we decipher this Best Picture race at the Oscars this year? How do we wade our way through those waters, Chris?
Okay. I think right now I'm going for The Revenant and the Mad Max split. Director for the Mad Max and picture for Revenant. It could change. I don't know. Like you said, there's no clear front runner. Spotlight could be the boring choice and win. I only say boring because it's an okay movie. It's perfectly fine, but there's nothing like special to it, in my opinion. Whereas the other ones, at least there's something there, you know. I pray it's not The Big Short. I could go on for an hour about that, but I'm sure you don't want to hear that. If I had to pick, it would be Brooklyn. So, you know my taste.
It'd be a big upset, a Brooklyn win.
Yes, it would. It's never going to happen in a million years.
Yeah.
It could be the last hurrah for the older voters. It could be their big fuck you as they get kicked out.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, Brooklyn last.
Yeah. Ed, what do you think?
Well, I'm looking through now. I feel like Spotlight did underwhelm a little bit in the Guild Awards, and so did Room, but I feel like those two movies both had smaller distributors, either A24 with Room and Open Road with Spotlight, and perhaps they were just focusing more of their resources in on the Academy voters, and I think that might pay off for them. I'm not a huge fan of Spotlight either, but I feel like it is honestly the less special movies that do get more of the consensus ultimately in this kind of voting system. So until I see that really fail, it seems like the smart money. But speaking of smart money, The Big Short, I think, is also it got a lot of momentum at just the right time around nominations time, even though the Golden Globes blunted a bit, but they don't really vote except for one of them. But yeah, it could be. I think Mad Max would be the really outside chance for an upset, and that would be the most inspired way they can possibly go. But yeah, The Revenant also has broad support. It doesn't have a writing nomination, but it doesn't really. It's like with Birdman not getting editing last year. Like, it's not really about the editing in that case or the writing in this case.
Yeah. No, it's such an interesting race. What do you think, Jalal?
Let's see. I'll just go down the films. I think.
Yeah.
I'll defend Spotlight. I think Spotlight's a brilliant film, but it's not the type of movie that I think Academy members will vote for. I think Sasha Stone pointed out that very, very few non-studio films have won Best Picture, and I forgot who distributed Spotlight, but it's not a big studio, or in any way. The Revenant is, and I think The Revenant has enough. How do I say this politely? It looks like a bunch of artists. It looks like a big male artist jerk-off session.
Yeah, it's very muscular.
And I think it's a good movie. It's not the best, but it'll also be better than. It'll be similar, I think, to Birdman winning last year. It was a good film, not the best in the category, but better than the picks in the past. I think Mad Max has a chance at some categories, but not Best Picture. And I think The Big Short peaked too early. I think it was, Vanity Fair compared it to American Hustle, and everyone was kind of obsessed with it when it first came out. And now, but it's fun to watch, but you don't feel for the characters in it. It's not really a director's film, even though he got nominated for Best Director. There's nothing really, besides the editing, there's nothing really cinematic behind it. So I think it'll be like American Hustle, and it'll just be nominated for everything and not win.
Does any let's go through some of the also-rans or some of the ones that aren't at the top of our discussion. Room, does that have any chance? It did get a director's nomination that surprised a lot of people.
I have it in third.
You have it in third. Now, why do you have it so high? That is a high position for Room, I would say.
I think I was worried because it failed at the Guild Awards, and I think that's more. It's a small independent film, but once people start seeing it, I think it'll really resonate with people. And out of all 8 nominees, I think people will have the biggest emotional reaction to it. So I think in a preferential voting system, we could see like a very small chance of an upset, since it is the most. It has a rooting factor to it. You really relate to the characters. It has two new breakout stars. It has 2 Lupita Nyong'os in one. It has Brie Larson and it has Jacob Tremblay. So I think this new voting system that we've had for 4 years is going to produce a very surprising winner one year. And so maybe this year it's Room, although I don't think I'm probably going to knock it further down, but if anything surprises, it'll be Room.
Now, I predicted Lenny Abramson for Best Director, so that was my little bit of I didn't do great with predictions this year, but I was pleased I got him right. I didn't predict Jacob Tremblay, so I was like, I sort of was all over the map with my Room predictions. And I predicted that because I knew that would be a film that if you saw it and if you loved it, you'd put it high, and you'd put that there would be. I knew that he'd be getting the #1 votes for the preferential voting. I think the thing that hurts Room in the Best Picture race is the preferential voting now is you need to get to over 50% of the pile of ballots is how it works. And I just don't know if the support for Room's going to be that broad. Like, I feel like it's still... I think Room in Best Picture race, there are people be voting for it, because I agree with you, Jalal, that there are people who are going to see the film and it's going to connect with them. I'll be honest, of all the films in the Best Picture race that I've seen, it's not necessarily my favorite Room, but it's the one where I got lost in the film the most. It's the one where I sort of was in the world the most, so I can see, and that's when I saw it, I go, people are voting for this #1. There's no way that you don't walk out of that film. So there's some people who don't walk out of that film and go, boy, that was the best film-going experience I had all year. So I think that it'll do well with #1 votes. I'm not sure it'll do well enough with those high-ranked votes to get over half of the ballots in their pile before another film does. Anyway, any thoughts on Room, Abad?
I had a similar feeling to you. If I had a ballot, I would probably put this #1, but it does seem a bit small to imagine it getting over the 51% mark.
And Chris?
I agree. I see what you're saying about the #1 votes. I don't think it has enough either. And I do agree with what was said before about The Revenant with the whole, artistic angle of it, let's say. I think it's pretentious, just like Birdman was, which is not a bad thing, but it is, and the Mad Max is not. That's why I don't think it doesn't have a shot to win Best Picture. It's a pure manly man kind of, even if it has a female lead, it has a manly man kind of feel to it, whereas Revenant, it's supposed to be important, and the guy's trekking through the thing. That's why I think it has the better shot. Room, I think you're right about the emotional attachment to it. I was more attached to The Big Short, again, for bad reasons, though. I think in the past, Bridge of Spies, if it had been 5 nominees, might have done really well.
Yeah, Bridge of Spies is definitely a winner if this is 1997
Yes.
or 1996 or something in the awards. Really, Chris, you got to say Mad Max is manly man film. Like
it is.
The Revenant is more so. Surely you barely see a woman in that movie.
Well, that's true, but I mean by the way it's presented, with the chases and the fire and the thing is, my point is that the Revenant seems more important by the trek and his revenge, and it seems more artistic in an important way than Mad Max does. I thought both were good films, but I think people are more inclined to vote for the important thing.
I agree with that on a surface level, but I think underneath, Mad Max is more political than The Revenant, because there's the conversation about women in wartime that George Miller had with his cast. There's the conversation about water, which is a huge conversation in America right now. So I think if you really looked at Mad Max, it's actually, to me, more relevant and political than The Revenant, but you really have to look at it to understand that.
I'd agree.
And voters won't do that.
And when I think of the Mad Max, yeah, I think of how Max himself gets sort of relegated into like almost a supporting role while Charlize Theron saves these women from this oppression. Whereas when I think of The Revenant, I think, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio was cold and he opened a moose carcass and slept in it, and that's like pretty manly by comparison.
Yeah, it's really how many voters in the Academy are in Flint, Michigan? Because they might really connect.
Michael Moore is from Flint, Michigan, and he's on the news right now talking about it. So
yeah,
I think he's joining the boycott.
Yeah,
he's joining the boycott, but
Michael Moore getting involved as always. Now, The Martian is also a film that people were talking. It won the Golden Globe for Best Comedy Picture over The Big Short. That's a big surprise. It was on a massive high. Then it missed out on the Best Director nomination for Ridley Scott, which I also predicted. That was my other big predictor. I bumped him for The Room guy. But now no one's talking about The Martian winning Best Picture. Is there any hope left for The Martian? Could we be in a Ben Affleck situation where there rallies some support because people feel bad for Ridley? What do you think, Chris?
I don't think so, only because it felt like when the Ben Affleck thing happened, it was a sustained conversation. The Ridley Scott thing seemed to be around a day, at least as far as media goes. I think The Martian is, again, a good movie, but it's the most lightweight, I think, out of all of them. It's enjoyable. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah. Other thoughts?
The editing miss also hurt it, so I don't see it happening with both of those misses.
Yeah. And Ben Affleck is much more charming than Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott comes across very cold, especially at his Golden Globe speech. I don't think there's no passion behind him. I don't think now.
And there wasn't that outrage like was said before about Ridley Scott being snubbed, as when Ben Affleck was snubbed. That was the big story that year. That was that year's Oscars so white.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so I think that's pretty what was I going to say? Yeah, that's pretty fair. I think The Martian. There isn't that huge sort of rally about Ridley Scott missing out that there was with Ben. That was a big story that year. The Screen Actors Guilds are less than a week away now. Why don't we go through each of those sort of 4 acting races briefly, and we can sort of touch on how that could impact the Oscar race. So sort of we'll look at SAG so we can talk about sort of knock over both birds with one stone sort of thing. And let's start with the lead actor race. It's all Leo, right? Are we seeing anything other than a Leo win at SAG leading to a Leo win at the Oscars? I guess speak up now if you see something else happening.
Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
Okay. So are you saying that could happen, Joel, or do you think that will happen?
I've had him in my predictions at SAG forever, and I think the other day I just switched to Leo to first. And I think I don't know what's going to happen. And I think if Bryan Cranston wins, it's not going to affect the Oscars at all. It's just because Bryan Cranston is probably the most respected actor in the media right now. Breaking Bad. He's just been around forever. He won a Tony last year. He beat Matthew McConaughey at the Emmys. I think it'll be really easy for him to win SAG. But I think even without SAG voters seeing The Revenant, I think because the internet has taken control of this campaign, I think SAG voters might still vote for Leo, but there's still a huge chance Bryan Cranston might win.
Yeah. Ibad, what do you think?
Yeah, I think Leo's Leo has enough name recognition that he could still win whether or not they saw The Revenant in the actual voting time. But Bryan Cranston is really beloved among actors in TV and film, obviously. And last year showed you can never be too sure about what's going to happen in that race until SAG speaks up. But I imagine Leo will seal the deal, but I don't know that it's 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
I'd agree.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's a fascinating race, but it does look like this is Leo's year. That would be interesting, though, if Cranston won the SAG. Does it change the conversation? No, we don't think so. I think in some ways it could make it even highlight. No, we have to give the Oscar to Leo. Like, it could even help Leo even more. I think he's in such a strong spot, Leo. I find it hard to see him losing that Oscar, at least. I agree. SAG's a little bit more up in the air, would make it a little more interesting if it went to someone else, but yeah, pretty confident in that. And what else was I looking at? So let's go to actress. Brie Larson is in front for both of the awards. Who do we see her biggest threat at the moment? Chris.
I'll go with the consensus with Saoirse Ronan. I would love for her to win, but I don't think it's going to happen. If she has any shot to win an Oscar, it has to be here to win the SAG too. But I think so many people have seen Room or at least heard about it and heard this. I think she's a lock, Brie.
A lock, okay.
Yeah.
What do you think about?
I think she's definitely the front runner. Although Saoirse Ronan has been a proven commodity in the past, having been a prior nominee, and she's more at the front and center of her movie, so I also think she's pretty a plausible alternative. Even though I'd go with Brie Larson right now, and I'd say Room's Oscar showing made her more secure than Saoirse.
Yeah. John?
Strictly for SAG, I would say Cate Blanchett is her biggest competition. I think if Saoirse Ronan was going to be Brie Larson, it would have been at the Golden Globes. It was a story about an immigrant coming to America, and she's European, and she still couldn't win the Globe. And I think SAG, except for Eddie Redmayne, when the front runner doesn't win, it's usually a well-respected veteran. And I think Cate Blanchett fits that. And I think so does Helen Mirren, but no one's talking about Woman in Gold right now. So I think it's Brie Larson, but if there is an upset, it would be Cate.
Cool. That's pretty big. No, what was I going to say? I just feel like it's going to be Saoirse if Brie loses. Now, I had Charlotte Rampling as my spoiler for the Oscar, just because I felt like I feel like for Brie to lose, there needs to be a late break in momentum a particular way. And I can see Rampling being the type of performance that people start talking about and word of mouth amongst the Academy. It's sort of one that can inspire passion. There's a reason it got a surprise nomination. And I think that film, by the people who love it, is loved and could get people talking. She's a very respected actress. All these reasons why I think she could be the one who spoils for Brie. Then she recently came out saying that a very controversial comment about the white Oscars that I think is just completely gotten in the way of any sort of positive. She needed people focusing on her performance, not her.
I will say that I think a lot of Academy members do agree with her, and she might only get more votes out of that.
Whoa, interesting.
Yes.
Whoa, yeah.
A lot of older white
times
members
worse.
think like that, yeah. You see the Hollywood Reporter reaction to the rules, and that is a lot of their mindsets.
Boy, that would be controversial. I do think that for her to win, she needs people really focused on her performance. That's what she needs. That's what she needs the story to be about, and everything. I think commenting so provocatively about this issue, it turns her into more sort of a figure on this issue like, you don't want people voting for or against that comment. I think if you're her, because Brie Larson's gonna have a lot of support regardless.
Yeah.
Like, I think, you know, and I think, yeah, so that's my, I think Brie's now looking like it's her or Saoirse is gonna win. I think Saoirse. I think Brie is probably gonna take this out. I think the support for Room is good. I think, you know, the Academy members are going to want to see Brie Larson up there accepting the award, and what's a negative for Brie Larson? Why wouldn't you vote for Brie Larson? She's not a lead. Is that the only?
Or that she disappears in stretches of it, I guess.
Yeah.
But
She's the newest of the 5 nominees. She is the newest to the industry, and besides Charlotte Rampling, she's the newest. Her and Charlotte Rampling, or has Charlotte Rampling been nominated before?
I don't know.
So she's the first. So her and Charlotte are the newest to the Oscars, because Saoirse's been nominated before, Kate's been nominated and won twice, and Jennifer Lawrence, obviously. So that's the only detractor I could see from Brie Larson.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Let's go supporting actress. Supporting actress. This is probably the most interesting race, to some degree, in both of the awards, the Screen Actors Guild and the Oscars. How do you see it going down, Chris?
This is a hard one. I just sat through Steve Jobs yesterday, and Kate Winslet did a very good job in the movie. I think it's between her and Vikander. I think it's a toss-up. But Winslet, I think, might win the SAG. And I think she has a pretty good shot at the Oscar. Although I do think Vikander will probably win. I don't think Mara has a shot.
Why not?
You know, everyone, on a not related note, everyone says how she's co-lead, but I didn't see it that way at all, personally. I kind of felt that Cate Blanchett was clearly the lead. The story was around her and her relationship with her husband and with Therese. I think she belongs in supporting. I just do think that it's too subtle of a performance. McAdams is the same way. Unless they love Spotlight, I think it is also too subtle. But Mirren could play good here because her role in Trumbo was very, even though it was short and only here and there, it was very outrageous. Especially the scene when she was in the office with the studio head, and I think they might like that in Hollywood, that kind of brashness and that big role. But I think Winslet probably has a great shot at winning the SAG. Again, also I have to remember that so many people are voting on the SAGs that might not watch all these films. So who's their favorite? Kate Winslet, maybe. A person, I mean, So
yeah,
that's my thought.
What do you think, Joel?
I agree that Kate Winslet has a big shot, but I don't think that's going to translate into Oscar to a win at the Oscars. I think Helen Mirren could win. She's in a SAG Ensemble nominated film. I'm predicting Rooney Mara, and just because I have no idea who's going to win, and I think Rooney Mara deserves it, and I think most of the talk is around Rooney Mara and Alicia Vikander, two actresses that are relatively new to Hollywood, and they don't play the game. They're both kind of perceived as, in interviews, they're kind of perceived as cold, and they don't outwardly campaign, but I think Rooney Mara might have a little bit more support because she's been around longer. And she got that surprise lead actress nomination for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which means people are paying attention to her. And maybe because she's been nominated before, and that might give her a little bit of edge over Vikander. And I think Carol's a much better film than The Danish Girl, and if voters are watching the films, they might take that into consideration.
Yeah. Evan?
Yeah, I also love Carol and Rooney Mara in it, so I'm trying to avoid bias, but I also think she's a more recognizable name between her and Vikander, at least for SAG. I think Vikander's body of work will be more of a factor with the Academy voters and might put her over the edge to win. I hadn't considered Kate Winslet, but that is an interesting possibility. But I agree that I don't think that would translate to an Oscar win for her necessarily because people know that she's already won before and this is sort of just like a comeback role and Steve Jobs underperformed. I would look out for Rachel McAdams in a sort of Tilda Swinton-esque way if she splits the votes and she's in the only Best Picture nominee there and at SAG. But at SAG, I'm personally predicting Rooney Mara right now. I have Alicia in second, and I guess I would consider Kate third.
Well, yeah, and look at it, like, Rachel McAdams, the only contender here who is in a film that it seems like the Academy really liked across the board. Like, you know, Carol underperformed. That was one of the big losers of Oscar nomination morning. Steve Jobs definitely didn't strike a chord. Hateful Eight hasn't struck a chord. You know, it's really the Danish Girl hasn't really struck a chord. Like, you know, none of the, you know, and Rachel McAdams, probably a lot of people are ranking in that last slot as well, or one of the last two slots. So it's really an open race here. I think if Winslet had never won an Oscar before, she'd be looking like a very exciting late-breaking prospect after a Globe win here to come. That's the thing holding me back from picking Winslet. I'm not sure if this is the kind of role where they'll want to give her a second Oscar for. I think it's pretty high profile that she's won one already. So, I don't know. I'm just scratching my head. I guess I'm sticking with Mara at the moment, but I'm definitely hoping to change before Oscar, before the Oscars. And Vikander's a very interesting person. As in, like, yeah. So it's very, like, it's a really up in the air race. And I wouldn't even rule out Jennifer Jason Leigh for the Hateful Eight.
Is she nominated at SAG?
Not for SAG, for the Oscars. So especially if especially someone like a Kate Winslet won at SAG, and then I think that like Kate Winslet then will be in the Oscar race well and truly, but I think it'll be an open race. I don't think she'll have it on lockdown because of her past win, and Jason Leigh could go through and get a surprise win there. I think if Rooney Mara or Alicia Vikander win the Screen Actors Guild, are they both nominated for Screen Actors Guild?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If either of them win, I think they're going to become the strong Oscar frontrunner.
Yeah.
Off that.
And I think Kate Winslet, what helps her is that the internet has pushed Leo's campaign to the forefront, and the internet has now kind of been talking about, because Kate Winslet won at the Globe, if they won together, it would be a Titanic reunion. So Titanic is on the forefront. I always get the composers confused. It's James Horner is Titanic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like that article pointed out, he passed away. It's gonna Titanic is gonna be on the in every Oscar article, and if older voters could relate to that. That's just me to put out there.
That's cool. Okay, now let's go to supporting actor. And with supporting actor, what's pretty interesting is let's go backwards with this. Okay, so the Oscars, Sylvester Stallone is the strong front runner to take that out. You got a great moment at the Globes when he won. Does anyone think Sylvester Stallone's going to lose the Oscar? Yeah. You do, Jalal. Oh well, talk us through that then. If you.
Okay. My theory is probably going to be wrong, but Sylvester Stallone's kind of Oscar story is that it's a comeback. And we see lots of those, but then I was thinking about it, and Oscar comebacks don't win. The two in the past 10 years have been Mickey Rourke and Michael Keaton, and they both lost. So I think if that is his only kind of, if that's his push to the Oscar, I think it's weak, but it's also a weak category. So he could still win, but I think voters don't care about a comeback usually, at least with men. And I could see someone like Tom Hardy riding the wave of The Revenant.
Well, Jalal, just to come back at you, Jalal, the two examples you cited of comebacks were both lead racers who lost to powerhouse performances, like Sean Penn in Milk, and like they were some tough races that those both had to overcome. But anyway, any other thoughts on what Jalal just said, guys?
I think he has the rooting factor, at least. I don't know if it's as much of a comeback narrative as just that it would be really nice to see him on that stage, in the way of like a Christopher Plummer in the past. He did miss out at SAG and BAFTA, and both of those I imagine might go to Mark Rylance, a much more respected sort of theatrical thespian type figure. But that could be how it broke down with when Lupita Nyong'o won the Critics' Choice and the Globe, when Jennifer Lawrence had the BAFTA and the... Oh no, sorry, I got them all mixed up. But I mean, in any case, but while I think Mark Rylance is in a pretty good position, I think Sylvester Stallone still has the more of the warmth behind him, more than Mark Ruffalo, even though he's in a Best Picture nominee too. Christian Bale, I don't see happening. Tom Hardy, I thought he was sort of a cartoon character in The Revenant, but I guess anything's possible. But I feel like, yeah, it's a weak enough field that it feels like Sylvester Stallone will have the big sort of standing ovation moment of the night.
Chris?
I'd agree. I think the Oscar field is pretty weak. Or, excuse me, I'm at the SAG field. I have no idea what's going to happen at SAG. Again, it's how many people have actually seen some of these movies, and with Stallone not there, I would imagine Tremblay would be probably out front, possibly, and Bale, since both of them. Also, possibly Elba. However, I don't think that's going to happen now. As for the Oscar, I think Stallone probably is obviously the front runner. I do think that he has the warmth and the comeback story. The movie was really good, and I'm not someone who likes boxing or is into any of that kind of thing, and I thought the movie was excellent. He was excellent. And again, look at the part. His character had cancer, so it's not just, oh, he was training this guy who's going to be the next great thing. He actually had an emotional arc in the movie. I think I agree. Tom Hardy would probably be second on my list, especially if there's a Revenant sweep type thing happening. I don't think Bale or Ruffalo have much of a shot, and I think Rylance would probably be my third pick. It's a very muted role. I think they might actually like that, and since he is such a respected actor, I think most of them will probably know that, even if they haven't been to Broadway to see his performances. And I think that's the kind of character it was supposed to be, so I don't think you can criticize the character him for being like that when that's the character he was. So I think he was a pretty strong third. That's my opinion.
Yeah, like the interesting thing is that Stallone is the front runner for the Oscars, but he's not nominated for the SAG. So it means that the Screen Actors Guild that we've got coming up, there is a chance for an alternate to emerge. There is a chance for someone to get a bit of momentum, a bit of steam over those days. Obviously, if Jacob Tremblay wins or an Idris Elba win, then that probably helps Stallone more than anyone, because it stops anyone else from getting some more oxygen in the race. I think like a Rylance would be a good alternate for Stallone. I don't think there's a whole lot of passion behind that performance. I think a Tom Hardy is someone, like, you know, he's not in SAG either, but like it's more if it could be like a Revenant, sort of a lot of momentum behind the Revenant, then Tom Hardy could maybe pick up more support. Although it's probably worth noting he hasn't been the best campaigner this award season. Tom Hardy and yeah, so it's going to be interesting. At the moment, I think Stallone's pretty safe for that Oscar, just because I don't see that strong alternate. I don't know who they go, where the passion is to go elsewhere. Yeah.
Does it hurt him that so the Oscar So White hashtag and all the headlines have been talking about it, and in that they talk about even films with people of color as the leads, the recognition is for white characters like Sylvester Stallone, and he's always the prime example. Does that hurt him, do you think?
I think, like, if so, marginally. But I don't think it's a huge factor. What do you guys think?
No, I don't think so.
It's still a film helmed by one of the major up-and-coming black directorial talents in Ryan Coogler. And, you know, and he did sort of try to backstep at his Critics' Choice Awards speech. He made sure to thank him and Michael B. Jordan in particular, and he also included Tessa Thompson in there. So it seems like the damage control is done.
It could also be seen as being supportive of the film itself, to give the film by them an Oscar, even if it's for Stallone.
Since it was overlooked in general.
Yes.
Now, in the midst of film awards season, there's a few TV awards getting handed out at the SAGs. And the front runners at the moment to win the Best Ensemble prizes are Game of Thrones and Veep, the two Emmy winners from last year. Let's just go down the line. Do we agree that they're the two that are going to take it out? Will the Screen Actors Guild on the TV side of things follow the Emmys' lead, follow the Emmys' marching orders, or will they be a bit different, march to the beat of their own drum? Chris?
I haven't thought about it in a while, honestly, so
That's fun.
I think it will probably for drama, Game of Thrones and Downton Abbey. I think Downton has won a couple times, and I think it could win again. However, with the surge of Game of Thrones this past year, I think it's a pretty good bet on them to win. For comedy, I think Orange is the New Black is still in it. It's such a huge cast. I think that matters. And my personal hope, and I think it could happen, will be Transparent. The second season, I think, is even better than the first. And again, if they're watching it, I think that would be should be their winner. So I would think it's between those two.
Okay. What do you think, Abed?
I'm guessing since the Emmys shifted their voting system to a more populist style, they're a better harbinger of what would happen here. I think Mad Men could challenge Game of Thrones since it's its last opportunity. And Veep is never necessarily a sure bet with a huge group of people, but they make the most sense.
Yeah. Joel?
Drama, I go back and forth between Mad Men and and Game of Thrones. Just because I haven't seen Game of Thrones win. None of us have seen Game of Thrones win a SAG Ensemble, so that's the only reason I'm hesitant towards predicting Game of Thrones. But I think, like you said, Emmys changed their voting system and then they won. So I think it'll probably be Game of Thrones this year, just because there's really no one left for them to vote for. So I think Downton Abbey has kind of dropped in popularity even among older voters. And for comedy, I think Orange is the New Black is a lock. I think at SAG, I think there are factors for the ensemble races, and I think the number is a big ensemble, and diversity. Because SAG is a very huge, large, diverse guild. And Orange is the New Black is an all-woman cast, basically. And it's out of every single race, or ensemble race, in terms of film and television, it's the most diverse. Or one of the most diverse. And I think voters are going to respond to it. And it's still an immensely popular show.
And I think, I think the promising sign for a Veep is that for the past year or two, they've done quite well at Guild Awards, getting nominations. They've popped up in a lot of places. And I think maybe not this past year, but the year before, it was them and Modern Family were the only two comedies that were sort of getting consistent Guild nominations across the board. So I think that bodes well for them, but I still think a show like Transparent, which is a bit more fresh in voters' minds because Season 2 came out more recently, could pose an upset there. And yeah, I think Game of Thrones probably has it, and I sort of agree with, I think Mad Men's sort of been a while ago now, it seems a bit over, but Downton Abbey has sort of just been airing recently, and I guess it is a show that the SAG voters have loved, so that wouldn't shock me, a Downton win. Anyway, this is fun, guys, chatting and about awards, talking films, talking Oscars. So everyone watching this, join the Gold Derby forum so you can be part of this discussion too, because we're going to continue talking about all this stuff there. Chris is Christopher K in the forum, so you can you can keep reading his comments. Ibad is Manakamana in the forums, and Jalal is J Haddad in the forums, and I'm Matt Noble in the forums, my name, so that's pretty easy to find me. Anyway, join the forums, keep talking about the rule changes, Best Picture race, the Screen Actors Guild Awards, which actors are going to win Oscars, and thanks for watching, guys. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.